we're on Tuesday, the 27th of October, 2020. The time now is 7 minutes past PM, 7 minutes past 7 in the evening. And therefore the rising sign is Gemini, okay? And essentially what we're looking at here is the position of the sun. We'll start with the position of the sun. Or in fact, we'll start with the moon. Hang on a minute. I just got there's still people to bring into the room. So the moon is in Pisces. So it's quite receptive. Okay, so there's a receptive feeling tonight. It's a good time for us to launch something, actually, because there's a sort of like a collective tuning in when the moon's in Pisces. Okay, so and imaginations are very open, so that's a good thing, right? Because you'll see the picture that we're trying to paint here, I think, or something like that. We're going to be as neutral as possible, of course, but there's an understanding, I think, that could be seen as being a sort of connectivity. We've got the sun in Scorpio right now. It moved into Scorpio a few days ago. And yesterday, very importantly, yesterday was the Sun-Mercury conjunction. Now, this only happens, Sun and Mercury meet 6 times a year. They have a conjunction 6 times a year, but 3 of those are when Mercury resets itself and begins a new cycle. And one of those was yesterday. So that's because Mercury is retrograde at the moment. So when Mercury is doing its retrograde, it makes what is called an inferior conjunction to the sun. That is to say, it's in between the sun and the earth. So it's moved into a sacred space, if you like, a sort of almost like a protective space of its own. So when it moves into that conjunction, then there's like, it resets itself, because what it is the messenger in the king's court, if you like. The messenger has been given the new set of information, or the new communications, or the new ideas, or the new statements, or the new understandings of things. And it's then the messenger's job to take that away from the king's court. It's going to zoom ahead like the herald would jump on his horse. The king would give him a scroll. The messenger would jump on his horse and he'd ride off to other lands or around the kingdom, spreading the news. Okay, a bit like a town crier or something like that is kind of when Mercury is making its inferior conjunction. Okay, so it just happened yesterday. So things have started. Okay, and this is a theme that's going to carry on now. Mercury is now going to go into Libra. Okay, it's part of its retrograde. The reason it's crossing over signs at the moment is because the last 18 months, Mercury has been doing its retrogrades in water signs, each time moving a bit backwards. Okay, each time it did something in Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio, it got to this point, and now this is the last of the water sign retrogrades. It's about to start doing 18 months of retrogrades in air signs. So we're getting this very important transfer of information at the moment. We've been taking an emotional context, a down water, that down and in feeling of water. And Mercury is going to be taking new messages that now go up and outwards and airy and light and move upwards. Okay, because the next set of Mercury retrogrades over 18 months is going to be in air signs. All right. So this is a really quite a key understanding or important moment to think about. All right. All the news that we're getting at the moment is carrying a sort of like, there's a lot of emotional charge behind it, but it's going to lead to rational and thought-provoking and debatable and intellectual topics as we go into the next sort of phase of news. All right. So this Mercury Sun conjunction was yesterday, and we're going to look a little bit at the headlines that happened. Okay, so I've got some things loaded up there to talk to you about. All right, that I'll talk to you about in a minute. But here I want to show you how Mercury, as you can see, is at 0 Scorpio. It's just about to go into Libra. It's going to do it like in the next few hours. Okay, funnily enough, right? Exactly on the other side, leaving Virgo right now and going into its own sign is Venus. And Venus is at 29 Virgo, literally in a few hours, about to go into Libra. So we've got this really interesting shift of the elemental state of life, if you like, and how we progress through time, because Venus is leaving the picky, critical sign of Virgo. That particularly when Venus is there, it's very critical, you know, because it's not happy there. It's in its fall. It's been in its fall for a few weeks. It's now going into its domicile. It's come home. It's back in its place. It's like, oh, just crossing the border. Hello, everybody. You know, hi. And everyone's like, yay, Venus is home. Great, fantastic. At the same time as Mercury is moving into Libra as well. And of course, Libra is the sign of the scales, right? So you get like this, imagine a set of scales. There you are at the market, and you've got a set of scales. And Venus has gone and sat into one dish, and Mercury sits in the other at the same time. And they're having to weigh each other up, okay? Because that's like the Libra influence, you know? It's the idea of weights and measures and balancing it out, okay? So there's about to be, in our lives, a lot of balancing things out, right? So Mercury has been getting very deep and piercing with its insight, okay? Mercury in Scorpio, right? It's been there all of October, right? It was in Scorpio. It opposed Uranus, yeah? It's going to come back and do that again later, you know? And it started its whole kind of thing. It's been actually the most important parts of the Mercury cycle have just been here at the very beginning of Scorpio, okay? So because this is where it's done its evening star greatest elongation, and it's doing its conjunction with the sun at 3 degrees of Scorpio. It did it at, and it's doing its greatest elongation as a morning star on the 10th of November. 10th of November. So that is another key date. So look at the news now. Look back to the 1st of October. That was the evening star and the morning star, and they're all happening in this little bit of Scorpio here. Mercury makes its real impact, okay, as its retrograde cycle, doing evening star, conjunction, inferior conjunction, and then morning star. Elongations farthest away from the sun, so it went ahead of the sun, then it conjoined the sun yesterday, and now it's going to be behind the sun, okay, so as the sun goes ahead. So there's some 3 important things to think about now. So here we have the set of scales with Venus in one dish and Mercury in the other, both joining at the same time. And I think that's really interesting, okay? So we've got to now start to there needs to be right now, people have been heated up. People are very hot at the moment, right? Because when you've got 2 planets in Scorpio, you have to look, well, who's the ruler of Scorpio? And it's Mars, yeah? And where's Mars? Well, Mars is in his own sign as well. You know, he's up in his other sign that he rules, Aries, doing a retrograde, which hasn't happened since, I think it's 1942. Was the last time that Mars did a retrograde in Aries. So this is a very rare occurrence, very important times we're in, you know, when we've got the Mars pushing ahead with things. So let's now look at some of the headlines, all right? Meanwhile, by the way, just to fill in all the rest of it, we've got, of course, the Jupiter-Pluto is upcoming on November the 12th. That's a conjunction. That'll be the 3rd time they've met this year. And then we've got Mercury is coming back to square Saturn and Venus has just finished trining Saturn. Okay, so Venus trining Saturn is like, you know, that's a bit of the old, like, well, you know, we're thinking about values of things and we're going to be tough as we like, right? You know, Venus trine Saturn, we're going to keep to the rules, you know. Whereas then Mercury in Libra is going back here and it's going to square Saturn in the next few days, leading to its station where it goes to 25 Libra. It'll be stationing, squaring Saturn. And Mercury will be like, can we just debate this a bit more? Like, you know, don't we need to find fairness and justice and all this? And why are you being so mean? Old Saturn in Capricorn, why are you being so cruel? You know, and things like that. Okay, so we're going to look at some of the news headlines now. All right, so here we go. I'll just find those for you. They are here. So today's newspapers. All right. So interestingly, we've got this idea of the Red Wall Revolt and COVID immunity warning. Okay. So Red Wall Revolt, well, Mars, what rules the color red? That'll be Mars. Yeah. So we've got revolt is when something's angry, right? So you've got like the Mercury and Sun in Scorpio having to answer to angry old Mars in Aries, who's retrograde. So there's this could be seen as, if you look at this headline here in the eye, Tories in North challenge PM over lockdown. Well, of course, the Tories won an 80-seat majority in the general election. Do you think Mars in Aries might be regretting that now? Like a bit of a rash move, the people are having to think, oh, what did we do? Right? So, and now there's clearly a very obvious north-south divide appearing, which was apparently not going to happen in the manifesto, of course. There was going to be a great levelling up, which, of course, brings us straight back to the quote that Boris Johnson is, I'm going to level up, right, with everybody in the general election. That's what helped him win all those seats, was the idea, yes, I'm going to, we'll do this HS2 thing, we'll do this, level up everybody, and it'll be great. And he hasn't done that at all, not one bit, right? And of course, then look at the chart again, and here are the two. What's leveling up? Well, it sounds quite Libra, doesn't it? Right? You're meant to kind of have something that's fair, balanced, level it up. And so these two planets now coming into Libra is going to put Boris's statement on the line, right? So what's going to happen now is, of course, all those Tory MPs who are now demanding a clear roadmap, right? Now, of course, Mercury is traveling, Mercury is like the road, right? So what's a clear roadmap? Well, Mercury's retrograde at the moment. It's not going to be that clear, There's probably several routes you could take to get an answer here, But it's interesting, that is going on, right? So, it's the backbenchers who captured seats from Labour's at last year's election, warn of economic hardship with no end in sight, without regional recovery plan. All this sort of stuff was talked about in the manifesto, and it clearly hasn't happened yet. So let's move on to the next headline. Also, just want to add this one. We're going to bring this up in a minute. This is the supertanker just off the Isle of Wight that got hit on by pirates just like yesterday, which is quite a surprise, of course. But what is a pirate? A pirate's very Scorpio and Aries. A pirate it really is the old Jolly Roger kind of fly the flag of and so a pirate is Mercury and the Sun in Scorpio, making an inferior conjunction. And the stowaways, they were hidden, a scorpionic thing, hidden in the boat. They suddenly then went to the ship's deck and sort of hijacked it. And that was a thing for the, as it says here, tanker mission for elite force, the SBS. So they sent in, it was a great moment for British military action, Mars in Aries. So there you go, in a water sign with the Sun, Mercury in Scorpio.
Interesting that the ship is red.
And absolutely it is, yeah. So, and let's not forget another one, just for a really good one, was Water on the Moon, of course, yesterday. That was his choice. Just when the moon's in Pisces, it was conjuncting Neptune, right? And they say, well, there's water on the moon. Yeah, okay. Well, we like that as astrologers, of course. We fully believe that to be the case, But so we'll see what happens with that one. That's going to be an interesting development in the world of science and technology, and how they're proposing to use that water to do something with lunar bases and further travel into space. So that's quite interesting. Let's quickly look at the Guardian here. Northern Tory MPs demand. So here's that statement again, the clear roadmap. Yeah. This is to do with the virus lockdown, so much chaos, but Mercury retrograde has proved that to be the total chaos. Everyone's passing the buck, trying to blame each other, So there's lots of that going on at the moment. And now we get the first mention here of the row of the free meals intensifies. So Mercury is young people, children, school children. Scorpio is resources. what resources are available? Well, it's very interesting when the Tory government have been talking about billions here and billions there for everything from PPE equipment and all the, you know, all the contracts going out, billions and billions of pounds mentioned in the news every day. And yet somehow it's chronically ironic that they can't find money to feed school children, you know. And it reminds me of that idea of the sort of Oliver Twist in Charles Dickens. But, you know, please, sir, can I have some more? You know, is the idea of like, can I just please have the school meals? You know, or can we please have the school meals? No, you can't, because actually we're going to offer all this excessive money for all these other things, whilst overlooking. And what's being shown here is the imbalance of government policies, right? And how the way government runs, how incompetent it can be, right? So the idea of Saturn Pluto conjuncting in Capricorn is the exposure of this. And so we're now going to be entering a 30-year phase where government will be restructured, right? But at first we just see all the corruption, we see all the stuff that's deeply buried, and it's basically the idea that government in the current system that it doesn't work, you know, or it's like a really bad imbalance. So, you know, this idea of this really being exposed very strongly, it's simple humanitarianism, you know, feed people. Well, actually, no, we've got really massive programs to do with lorry parks in Brexit and all this sort of stuff. Well, no, but you're not feeding people, you know, and so that's a kind of Saturn in you know, there's something deeply ironic that needs to be solved. And maybe that the Mercury Venus going into Libra at the same time starts to shift the argument across to how can we get better harmony for the country. The Tories have got to prove themselves. Well, they're riding on their wave of an 80-seat majority. They probably don't give a flop, you know, excuse my language, but they, you know, right? They're not really going to care that much because they've now got the country to 2024. So, you know, it's like, okay then, you know. But and what we're going to get as a result of that is basically is a political war, right, or something of that nature. There's going to be really probably, and I want to try and paint a positive picture here, but can you imagine how people are going to be very politically charged by things like this? This is just the beginning, you know. Taurus is food, right? We've got Uranus in Taurus at the moment, and we're about to have a full moon in Taurus. So this intensification, this verb here, intensify, if that's correct, if it's a verb, it might be an adverb, but it's the idea of an intensification of a situation. You know, it's not going to solve itself yet. There's a lot to be revealed, which is going to come in the next 3 to 4 days with the full moon.
Well, hopefully with the with Mercury and Venus going into Libra, there'll be some negotiations.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm wary of the time, Julian.
Right.
Let's move on.
All right then. Okay. Very quickly, Stowaways had tankers control room surrounded. Very Scorpionic thing. Lockdown risk crippling the north. Fresh vaccine is that's also the Mercury Sun conjunction. Was they announced a new vaccine yesterday, and of course Scorpio Mars in the needle, or you know, the spike, the idea of vaccination being very high on the agenda at the moment as finding a solution. Immunity only lasts a few months. We'll break the rules for Christmas. Holiday clubs ending the school meals row. There is water on the moon. We've looked at that. There's various little things here. Exemplary responses. Who is the US president? Milestones, and then for the thing, there we go. Okay, so that's probably it, except let's just have a quick look at the Financial Times. Undercover, this is great, this is a good one. Undercover, Mercury, Sun and Scorpio, right? You know, Trump's debt pile laid bare. Fantastic. What a beautiful rounding headline to end up that Mercury conjunct the Sun in Scorpio. That is just absolutely choice. All right. And maybe, you know, there's other things that could be seen there as well. So there we go. Yes, Robin, do you want to say something now, please? Because I've been talking too much.
I know you are. I just want to say really that you learn an enormous amount of astrology if you watch the news and you watch your ephemeris and you try and work out from your ephemeris where the planets are, what signs they're in, and how the news actually speaks what's happening. It's astrological speak, really, and you can learn an enormous amount of astrology just by relating the news to what's happening in the ephemeris. So where are we going now? Are you going to put up Marcus Rashford's chart? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think you've got to just cut the time down a bit, Jules, or we won't get through.
So this is Marcus Rashford. We know he was born the 31st of October 1997. It's a 12 noon chart. Okay. So we got the planets mostly in the right places, except for, maybe the moon is there, but maybe the moon's before the sun. I think it's quite interesting, actually. Is he the very last part of before the new moon, or is he a new moon birth? I think that's quite interesting to look into, because is he a really old soul just here to wrap things up, as it were, or is he here on a new mission? Like that kind of idea of, is he before or after the sun, his moon? Interesting. We'll see how he develops with that, because that's quite an interesting way of looking at it, but he is Sankaron, so he's here on a mission, like some healing stuff going on there, like he's here to change things a bit, shake up the status quo a bit with something maybe audacious. Of course, we've got Uranus opposing his sun at the moment, right? And that's exact. His sun, as we know, is 8 degrees Scorpio, and the full moon is 8 degrees Scorpio Taurus, bang on Uranus as well, right? So this guy has got, if Uranus, you see, in his natal chart, he's got Uranus in Aquarius, okay, with Jupiter. So this is, his very nature is humanitarian, okay? He wants to see, he thinks very much of the community, of the world at large, or the people at large, and he would probably like to see he's probably a strong visionary, particularly with that Venus and Mars in Sag and Pluto in Sag. And then he's got the qualities of the fighter with all those Scorpio things, which is why he's a centre forward for a football team, So there's a sense of a lot of that being, that's the footballer, right? Is the ability to be combative. So he's probably a good tackler, right, on the field, right? Because that's, you have to have that kind of Mars ability. And then with that Venus, he probably is quite good at that, that's what makes him why he's what plays for Manchester United. But he has other issues, right? The football just got him to one place. The football's got him to where he wanted to be, really, right? Because actually, it's now these issues can come to the forefront, right? Which is about community-based, a future vision for humanity, let's call it. Uranus and Jupiter in Aquarius. His Uranus squares his sun, okay? And he started in 2019, when Uranus was around about 4 degrees, actually, of Taurus, when he had his Uranus square Uranus. That was when he started his first food bank charities. That was in 2019. He started to get noticed for doing things with food banks back then. So he's now taken this. He's fired up.
He's only 23.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, so there's plenty of mileage in this guy, right? I mean, and I think, you see, with that Scorpio, he can be very influential, right? Emotionally, right? He can prod and poke people into action, right? In an emotional way, right? Now, normally he would have stadiums of people cheering him on, okay? Of course, he's used to that, and that's what he's paid for as well, is to entertain the masses with his sport. But when it comes to humanitarian issues, which are now coming to the forefront in his life, because of course the people aren't allowed to the stadiums at the moment, so he's actually saying, well, come on then, let's see something different here. He's actually getting the chance to be political as a different kind of platform. And the full moon in the full moon with Uranus here is bang on opposite his sun. So he could actually actively, he could choose to follow a different path. I think he's going to do football for a while longer, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him doing something later on, say around about the age of 35, when footballers retire. He might suddenly get very, very active in politics, but he's getting a good name for himself now by standing strong against because the Mercury retrograde has been going against his Sun and against the Uranus. It's conjuncting his Sun, it's squaring that Uranus. So he's being quite strongly charged up. And by what he says, his statements, his communications, his Mercury. And now it goes into Libra, and it stations at 25 Libra, Mercury. And it's going to exactly make a really good aspect to his Venus. So he's going to be put up on the shoulders of people, it's like, hey, we like Marcus. People like him for what he says. Hey, dude, you're saying the right things,
Maybe loads of other footballers will emulate him.
And that is exactly it, Robin. It's the influence that he has at this point in time. And if there was ever to be an imbalance or rebalancing of the inequalities of things, it's the amount of money that footballers make. I don't think, but you understand that there's huge amounts of resources there, right? And it could be that it's a really, if you wanted to, I've thought about this actually, and I was thinking like, well, if footballers could maybe start really encouraging people to be more self-sufficient, right? Because, you've got footballers in football teams are very loyal. And it might be that actually there could be a whole new way of approaching, because you see, we're going to this age of Aquarius, right? And this is about communities, it's about like finding common ground, yeah. And if people feel hard done by government policies that don't seem to change, right? And if you just look very quickly here, interestingly enough, I saw this, which really blew my mind. This is hang on a minute. William Hague in the Daily Telegraph on impending inequality. Right, so he's just written an article in the Daily Telegraph this week. I think even today, it might be October 27th. He wrote in the Daily Telegraph today on impending inequality. That is to say, by writing an article like that, he's saying that there's going to be no equality. He says it. What is not yet obvious is the pandemic may well be followed by something else that will make a huge difference to this debate, a wave of innovation. So yeah, okay, that's great. So they're foreseeing the science and technology of things. 3 factors could make it next decade, right, which is that from the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction to the Jupiter-Saturn opposition, a time of extraordinary technological advances. There are the superpower rivalry of the US and China, the coming together of developments in many different fields of materials, genetics, communications, and energy, and the response to the pandemic itself, bringing more automation at the expense of jobs. Interesting. If that happens, there will be many benefits, but making us more equal will not be one of them. It will be a great time for the highly educated and those with shares in tech startups, and a very rough time for the rest. That is a member of the current government writing a comment article today, right, at the Mercury-Sun conjunction, right? That's huge for what they're actually saying that they're prepared to do. Impending inequality. They have no plans at all, right? So it seems, right? So when there are no plans at all with the current government, okay, and we're knowing that we've got Jupiter-Saturn coming up, right? Hang on a sec, we'll go back to Marcus Rashford's chart here. We've got the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction coming up, right, in 0 Aquarius, which is a whole new beginning. And Aquarius is community, okay? Aquarius is the people all grouping together. So what if the use of resources goes back to people more, right? That people who do have resources, but know that the world needs to change. Are we going to get maybe, self-sufficient communities? And that new moon in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus, right, could be very much part of that. Could it be that Sorry. Yeah. Could it be that people might start to think differently, you know, about how to use land, how to use resources, how to work together? You know, there might be a really big shift. And of course, the government carries on being the government and doing what they're doing. And exactly as he stated there, William Hague says that's what we're going to do, right? So there's a bigger divide, right? But what do people think? You know, what's going to happen here? You know, is it going to be that the masses work together at something, and then there's still tiny little kind of more, you know, really focused on their own little world, as it were. It's like the castle and the estate, right? Maybe it's going to be a bit like that again. You know, it's going to be really interesting. All right, what happens? But I wouldn't be surprised to see the clustering of communities. You know, and Brexit maybe is this breaking up of everything. You know, right down to county level. You know, or even town and city level, or even village level, where people start to say, well, actually, no, we do our own thing here, you know, because we're Aquarian now, right? So meanwhile, Parliament's still Parliament, you know. So we'll see, you know, it's going to be very, very interesting, right?
Could be the robots taking over.
Say again?
Could be the robots taking over.
Well, again, if you look at that statement, which is, you know, the best thing he's come up with, you know, I mean, I don't read the Telegraph, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
bringing more automation at the expense of jobs.
Yeah.
okay, we put that out. Let's move on.
All right. So good. Right. So so we've got the full moon coming up. Is basically the inklings or the beginning of Marcus Rashford coming up with maybe some quite charming statements that people like him for, because as I said, that Mercury goes back to make a good aspect to his Venus, and then it will come forwards again. He's got a lot to say, and I think he might be rallying let's say it's rallying the troops or rallying the football fans even.
Well, with Uranus opposition, that Sun and Moon,
Yeah.
and the full moon, I think we can expect something unexpected. Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think Halloween's going to be very interesting this year.
Yes.
For lots of people.
Yeah. So Robin, what's next? Do you want to talk about, should we do a quick look at Boris Johnson's chart?
Yeah, happy to do that.
So,
or I don't know how we're doing for time. Maybe we should just get off that and do a bit about America for a bit. We can come back to English politics, because we haven't just got people from the UK here tonight. So
right. Yeah. So we'll round up with a bit of Boris Johnson and stuff, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the Sibley chart. This is the most accepted American chart, I think, probably the most well-used one. It's the 10 past 5 p.m. chart on the 4th of July, 1776, okay? There's a lot of American charts, they say, you know, quite a few, all based on the 4th of July, but different times of the day. This one became the most popular one because when the Twin Towers happened in September 2001, Pluto was bang on the ascendant of the Sagittarius ascendant, and Saturn was opposite. So the Pluto-Saturn opposition was right across that axis on the day of the Twin Towers. So therefore, it is generally assumed that we use this chart, you know, the 10 past 5 one. So America has a Sagittarius ascendant, for those who may or may not know that. You now know it, you know. So Robin, what have you got to say? Please give us some insights.
I wasn't going to really talk much about their chart. I mean, there's several USA charts, but this is the one I generally use. But, you know, there are others. But I think what's important is that they've had the Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter opposition there, all their Cancer, and now opposition their Mercury. And they've got eclipses coming up across the angles, and they've got a Pluto return, and they've got the moon in Aquarius. So lots of things going to be hit off over the next 2 or 3 years. So whoever becomes president next week. You know, it's going to have quite a battle on their hands. People are still coming in. Can you admit that person?
I did. Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay. Gosh, 40 people. Gosh. Just goes to show people want to know what the hell's going on in the world.
Yeah.
What I would like to do is I just would really like to spend 10 minutes on the election or 5 minutes on the election, because a lot of people are asking me who's going to win the election. And I've got my views, but I'd like to put it out there the way I'm thinking and why I'm thinking the way I am. So do you want to let me share my screen?
Oh, absolutely, Robin. Yeah. As a co-host, I think you can do that. So I'll stop sharing. All right. And I think you should technically be able to share your screen straight away, hopefully.
So is that right? That's not my screen though, is it? That's yours. Oh, no,
yeah.
It might be my screen.
I can see you on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, it is actually my screen.
Good. That's your chart. Yeah, I can see your screen.
It is. All right, okay. So I'm going to just quickly go. I think Trump has the luck of the devil, really. He's very, very fortunate, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he actually gets back in one way or another, even though the voting seems to be for Biden at the moment. However, having looked at his transits, progressions, solar arcs, solar returns, etc., there were anomalies in those charts that maybe put a question mark in my mind about whether he was actually going to get in. And I had the same situation. I'm trying to escape from this, but I can't. I don't know why. Okay, that's weird. I think it's because I come out from the wrong way somehow. Okay. So what I don't even know. Have I got that up?
Got Donald Trump.
It's all right. So look, I'm just going to quickly look. Having looked at all his other transits, progressions, solar arcs, etc., I had a look at his moon phases, and I look at moon phases, eclipses in them, or part of eclipse cycles, simply because by doing that, I can see if anything important's coming up. So the interesting thing is that Donald Trump's at the end of some of these eclipse cycles. So this is the last, this is a lunar eclipse that he had in June, which resonated with his Uranus, nodes, sun and moon. And in July, he had another lunar eclipse, which was opposite his Mercury. That means that 9 months down the line, that whole cycle is finished and a new cycle is beginning. Now that new cycle could be beginning because he's going to be president and take over again, but it doesn't really actually begin until sometime in March. So I then looked at this solar eclipse that he has on his sun, moon and south node in December. Solar eclipse is like a new moon. So with a solar eclipse or a new moon, you can't actually see, it's like the seeds going into the ground, but you can't actually see what's going to develop from that. And the thing that makes me concerned about that is this solar eclipse is conjunct his south node. And from my experience, when something aspects the south node, it's a time of release, it's a time of letting go. So that didn't really, you know, fill me with any real definite feeling that he was going to become president again. Then I looked at the solar eclipse next June, which is picking up his Uranus. However, the Uranus, the outer planets, when I'm using the moon phases, I find that the outer planets are not really relevant. You know, you're talking about a person here, and a person, you know, you're not talking about a generation or anything like that. You're talking about someone's personal identity. And I rarely find that using Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto with eclipse cycles works. It doesn't really make things clear at all. So I just wasn't convinced when I saw those cycles. So then I had a look at Melania Trump. So I thought, okay, what's happening with Melania? So I didn't look at her eclipse cycle, anything like that. What I did see is on the 31st of December, Halloween, it's picking up Melania Trump's chart. Now, I don't know if the time is correct, but even if the time is not correct, that's what I was given. But even if it's not correct, it makes no difference. She still has this moon Uranus conjunct her sun Saturn, with the sun in opposition. Now, if it is a correct birth time, then it's on her ICMC as well. So that looks quite disruptive to me. So I'm wondering what's going to happen around the 31st of October for Melania. I had a look at Biden, and this is Biden's chart. Now, what struck me about Biden's chart was that he's got 4 planets in Scorpio. 4 planets in Scorpio and 1 in Taurus. Now, I know that all the eclipse cycles that are coming up after when the nodes go from Gemini and Sag, they then go to Taurus and Scorpio. So I know that these cycles have already begun, because, you know, if you have an eclipse, a lunar eclipse, you have to look 18 months before. So I know that some of these cycles are beginning, and he's already experiencing one of them. And so I worked out that he had a lot of eclipses, a lot, picking up all these different Scorpio planets, plus his moon in Taurus. So that was very interesting. I thought, gosh, this is something that's going forward. This is not something that's finishing. So there's his present eclipse cycle. So he had a new moon on the 22nd of May. And this is when he was put forward as the Democratic possible president. And that was 22nd of May. So that week he was put forward. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And the first quarter moon starts in the middle of February. And I didn't realize until today, actually, that the present president, if he's leaving the White House, doesn't leave actually until I think it's the 14th of February, something really, I mean, I was really shocked. Even though they might be inaugurated on the 21st of January, they actually don't move into the White House until the 14th of February. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. So here he is, he's got his first quarter moon, which is a manifestation of what that new moon is about. So immediately I thought I need to look at this more deeply. And so he has this eclipse cycle, and then he has another new moon and another cycle. So I looked for next year and the year after, down to the middle of 23, and he has all these eclipses. So he's got 3 solar eclipses and 2 lunar eclipses and another solar eclipse. So that is 6 solar eclipses plus the 2 from the last slide. So that's just up to the middle of 23. He's got more. He's got more than that. So that just really, I don't know if you can see that. I'll just make it a bit bigger. So for somebody to have this many eclipse cycles in this shorter period of time, looking at that's the end of 21, so that's 1 year, 1.5 years. That's a hell of a lot going on in his chart. So that means that, you know, if he's not president, he's going to have one hell of a time, and I don't know what he's going to be doing. But the interesting thing is this solar eclipse here, 29 Aries, which is conjuncting his moon, which is 0 Taurus. So I thought, right, okay, I went back and looked at his chart again. So here he is with all these planets in Scorpio. Moon in Taurus. What does the moon rule? Moon rule Gates house. So I thought, so who's going to be connected to that 29 of Aries? So I had a look then at Kamala Harris's chart. Okay, can you all see these charts okay?
Yes, thank you.
So Kamala Harris, amazing chart, beautiful shape, kite-shaped chart. This is someone who has a purpose in life. This chart is very, very similar to Ruth Bader Ginsburg's chart, very similar indeed. She's on a mission. Now, the interesting thing is that she's got an exact sun-moon opposition. So I presume that her birth time's correct, because in America they do have the birth times noted on their birth certificates. So sun-moon opposition, exact, born on a full moon, and the nodes are exactly to the degree on her ascendant, descendant. I thought that's really interesting. And then I'm looking at that full moon and I'm thinking, what about the eclipse? What eclipse is she going to have on this chart, and when is she going to have it? So I realized that this eclipse, which is on the 20th of April, 23, is conjunct solar eclipse, beginning, conjunct her moon, opposite her. So that means that 18 months from this date, 20th of April, 18 months, she's going to have a full moon right across this angle, right across this sun and moon, and this point. So I then had a look. What did I look at then? Yeah, so this is the full moon. This is the full moon on the 17th of October, 2024. Now, if I go back to Biden's chart is looking very dodgy around this period of time, and it's picking up his moon, which rules his 8th house. So I'm wondering, is Biden going to get in? Is something going to happen to Biden? And is Kamala Harris going to take over? So you see in this full moon chart that she's got Jupiter on the ascendant. And yeah, let's see what else I've done. I've done a load of charts to do with this because I was fascinated by it. I'm having trouble with this thing. It's not escaping and I don't know why. Okay. The next chart I'm showing you is her secondary progressions. So I did her secondary progressions. I don't know why I did the 21st of June. I think I was looking at something else. But when I did her secondary progressions, I realized that she'd got a moon north node exactly at 23 of Gemini on her ascendant. And the ruler of her chart is Mercury, and she's got Mercury Cazimi in her progressions exact within a nanosecond. And I just thought that that was really important. I meant to point out that her secondary progressions for the 21st of January inauguration.
Just a free astrology thing that popped up. Julian Venables.
Can you actually turn your mute on?
Sorry if you want to join all these things, but you've got to study it.
Who's talking?
Oh, have I got a Is this a trend?
Okay. Jules, can you mute that person, whoever it is?
I'm not sure how I can get all of the images up to see that actually.
Well, you can get them up on the side by pressing the square with all the little boxes in it.
Mm-hmm.
You can all see that we're just practicing all of this. Okay, so this is a tri-wheel, and this is Camilla Harris, 20th of April 2023. You can see I'm focusing on her because I know that something big's going to happen as far as she's concerned. So here she is with, here she is with the moon, progressed moon. Is that the progressed moon or the solar? No, that's progressed moon coming down to her north node. Her progressed Jupiter is very close to her Uranus. She's still got her progressed sun here, and the solar eclipse is on the inside. So I'm kind of giving this talk before everyone else cottons on to what's going on here. So again, oh yeah, 21st of January 2021, this is the inauguration day. So as you can see, her progressed sun is exactly on her descendant. They're both at 24 degrees. And of course the nodes are there as well because she's got a nodal return. No, this is a progression. Sorry, it's a progression, so the nodes are still there, obviously. And she's got a Saturn return as well. So her life is looking extremely eventful. And this is her solar return for 20th of October. 20th of October 2024. So again, she's got that moon Jupiter. This is solar return, so these are transits. So she's got this moon Jupiter here. So she's got the Jupiter in her Uranus in her transiting Uranus on her Jupiter, and in her progression, she's got the same thing. So the transits are playing out, linking up to the progressions as well. So very, very powerful. So she's definitely somebody that we need to be watching. So my money basically is on Biden because I don't know how Camilla Harris can live out these aspects that she's got coming up unless Biden's president, unless something extraordinary happens and then she gets put forward as the president. But certainly I would say that she's certainly going to make a big name for herself one way or the other. Okay, do you want to take over for the next bit, Jules?
Yeah, I'll just say Donald Trump's chart with the USA chart. It's interesting that he is very much like a rabble rouser if you just look at his, hang on a minute, so he's got his North Node at the moment on his on Mars. So the North Node is on Mars at the moment, and Neptune is coming up to square the Mars. This is America's Mars. Now, this Mars rises before the sun in the morning. So when the American chart was born, if you like, that 4th of July, Mars was rising before the sun. And therefore this is why America has a very strong military, and people carry weapons. It's a very militarized, Marsy kind of. This node here, bringing up the Mars and the Neptune squaring it, is maybe, it's interesting, maybe there's collectively quite a lot of confusion about how they see themselves. I'm picking out this Mars because it's 21 degrees Gemini, okay? And in Donald Trump's natal chart, has his sun sign at 22 Gemini on the America's Mars, okay? So this is why he's quite good at being a rabble rouser, at creating that kind of Mars quality to the, he's getting people very heated.